Harvard's first black president just quit. You won't believe why. We're going to get to the bottom of that. If you stick around to the end, you'll find out why this story sprinted like a marathon. I'm Tim Black. This is Calling It Out. So Claudine Gay was the first black president of Harvard University, the oldest university in American history. She was president number 30. It made big-time news when she became the president of Harvard. Her predecessor chose her, nominated her, said she was going to continue the work that he began to try to make up for Harvard's past, being a slave-holding university. The people that ran the school, the founders of the school, were racist. Slaveholders. Slaves worked for the university on the grounds. They built the school. And Harvard made it very clear they wanted to make up for that. And Dr. Gay was going to be a part of that. Did that have something to do with her being forced out? I mean, you don't take a job and then leave a job in 6 months. She took the job in June, court held starting in November, really October. It is out by January. It don't take a rocket scientist to realize something went wrong. So here goes the breakdown. Harvard, like other top colleges of its time, relied on slaves. A report came out in 2019 that said the school and people that ran Harvard had like 70 slaves that worked on the premises, and that the college itself actually made money from slavery. Harvard says they were trying to fix things by helping black students or descendants of slaves. We got stories of black students like W.E.B. Du Bois. And now we got Dr. Claudine Gay. And it shines a light on the fact of lack of diversity, lack of black folks working in Harvard. Big spotlight on it now. Ibram X. Kendi stood up for Dr. Gay. He said part of the reason why they were putting so much pressure on Dr. Gay was because, well, they wanted to get rid of her. They wanted to get rid of her because of racism, he says. But they couldn't use racism, so they used allegations of plagiarism to force her out. Kendi said they wouldn't have been so hard on her if she wasn't black. That they were just looking for an excuse. And to further throw gasoline on the fire, Kendi said they have an agenda. White folks have an agenda to get rid of black folks out of these prestigious universities. Evidence of this, I don't know if he has it, but just saying it leads to a lot of confrontation. Kendi said some won't stop at pushing out leaders, especially those that fight against racism. See, Dr. Gay faced a lot of criticism. Allegations of anti-Semitism. Allegations of plagiarism. There was a rich guy, some rich bastard, who launched an all-out propaganda campaign to kind of get rid of her, to throw dirt on her name and to force her out. It was pretty clear what they were up to. I'm not here to say that Kendi was right or wrong, but maybe somebody with money problems isn't the best person to defend you. At least not money problems that point to mishandling of funds. A black man mishandling funds, trying to help a sister who's been accused of anti-Semitism is sort of like the Cookie Monster trying to help the Hamburglar. Let me say this. Some say that Dr. Gay was forced out because she's a black woman. Dr. Gay is black. But so is Tim Scott. And so is Herschel Walker. And none of those Republicans or the conservatives would have done any fact-checking on their past credentials to find out if they did plagiarism. Those sellouts would have been just fine. Now, it's as if you're a certain type of black that's raising certain types of issues, speaking out on certain types of topics maybe, and poking a certain kind of bear. See, now, black people are not a monolith. We got all types of black people. Dr. Gay's a certain type of black person. Herschel Walker's a certain type of black person. So was Tim Scott. See, we got cowards, we got revolutionaries. And we got scholars, and we got morons, and we got sellouts, and we got everyday folks and average Joes. And we have the full plethora of individuals in our communities, just like all other communities. Now, Dr. Gay's problems are not just that she is a black woman. It's what kind of black woman she is and what was her agenda, what was her purpose. She stated her purpose very clear. She was the president of the African American Studies at Harvard. Getting the picture? She was dedicated, as was her predecessor, to creating more diversity in the school. Something that right now is being frowned upon all across mainstream America. Down with DEI, down with critical race theory. Yeah, we're in a time right now where reverse racism is a thing. And the most discriminated people to some are white guys. But see, I'm not going to so quickly jump into this whole thing that it was plagiarism. Hell, Joe Biden plagiarized. And for the record, they never said she did plagiarize. They said maybe she didn't cite her sources correctly. Okay, that's a nice way to say plagiarize. I'm down for calling out Republicans on their bullshit. And this right here, it smells like Republican bullshit. But I'm also down for calling out Democrats on their bullshit. Let's not forget the reason why Dr. Gay was in the hot seat to begin with. She was at a congressional hearing. She was under oath. And they asked her a question like, if someone called for the genocide of Jewish students at Harvard, would that be considered harassment and bullying? And instead of saying yes or no, Dr. Gay said, it depends on the context. Now, the Republican representative that answered that question doubled down and asked her again, hey, I'm going to need you to answer this. If someone said it was okay to genocide Jewish students at Harvard, would that be considered harassment and bullying and go against Harvard's code of conduct? And Dr. Gay would not answer. She said, I would need to know the context. This didn't go over well in the media. In fact, everybody came for Dr. Gay at that point. It was almost as if they no longer cared if she was a black woman, the first black woman, the first black person to become the president of Howard. So that's when I took a closer look at this thing, because I said, wow, that's strange. Why is it not working? You know, the whole diversity aspect of it all. And then I realized what it was. October 7th, when the Gaza War, so-called Gaza War, took effect, they say that Dr. Gay did not adequately oppose the war. And she did not adequately condemn Hamas. Because in their minds, everything was just fine in Israel until October 7th. They didn't count all the other times Palestinians were being slaughtered by the Israel or the IDF. That wasn't the problem. It wasn't until Hamas struck back at Israel that there was a problem. And well, Dr. Gay did not color inside the lines and make the requisite condemnation of all things Palestinian or Hamas. And that was the beginning of the end for Dr. Gay, because that's what called into question why she had to go to Capitol Hill to testify in front of the Congress and why the scrutiny of her became more and more severe. October 7th did it. Don't get me wrong, I think it's weak sauce that Dr. Gay could not say, hey, if you're saying you want to genocide Jewish students, you don't have a place in Harvard. That's why I say Dr. Gay was playing corny liberal games. Corny Democrat versus Republican reindeer games. It's the same type of garbage that Ketanji Brown Jackson pulled when she was before her nomination committee. Right? Remember when they were grilling her and they asked her, what is a woman? And all of a sudden, the Supreme Court Justice nominee didn't know what it was, did not know what a woman was. And I got a feeling she lived her entire life for 40-something or 50 years, however old she is, knowing exactly what she thought a woman was. But that day, in front of that body, all of a sudden she didn't want to say it. Once again, we got Democrats playing dumb liberal games with Republicans. For some reason, she survived it. Dr. Gay did not. Because Dr. Gay failed to condemn Hamas adequately to the sufficement of people that have power within the Harvard alumni. That's what did it for her. As upset as people are about Claudine Gay's resignation, she could have answered the GED question. She chose not to, which only added more fuel to the fire that they used to roast her ass out. I'm not saying I agree with it. I'm explaining to you what happened. Calm down. As controversial as they want to make this all seem, working class people could care less about this. They're too busy worried about working class things like getting to work on time, feeding the kids, tending to the bills, the mortgage, the rent, finding a place to stay, keeping the car up. You know, regular people stuff. Stuff that really matters. It's sad, you know? Every time a black person does something for the first time, it becomes all about clicks and views and publicity. Harvard's history is tied to slavery. Bar none, this is what it is. It's tied to big money interests, and it's still tied to big money interests. Dr. Gay didn't do herself no favors, but the powers that be made it very clear that they're going to put their finger on the scale unless you play ball. Being a black and a woman in these types of environments is super hard. I'm not going to take that off the table. We should care about regular folks as much as we care about Dr. Gay. Because Dr. Gay's going to be okay. I'm sure of it. I can see it now. She's going to write a book. Or someone's going to play her in a movie. A documentary is going to come out on Netflix, something. Or maybe all three will happen. At the end of the day, Dr. Gay only lost his job. In fact, she quit her job. She didn't lose anything. She resigned her position. So why did this story grow legs and run like a marathon? Because Harvard's racist as hell, and it's always been. It's full of a bunch of elitists, and it's also full of a lot of people who are connected to Israel. Don't let anybody tell you this isn't about what happened on October 7th, and they didn't feel that Dr. Gay went far enough. That's really what this is all about. Nobody cares about her not citing a certain record, a certain time in a dissertation that she did 20 years ago or whatever. That ain't what it's about. And if you believe that, you're a fool and you're looking for an easy out. Dr. Gay is the first black female president of Harvard, the first black president in 30 years or 30 presidents. That's it. It's been 30 presidents, and she's the first black one. And you get rid of her for some notes in the back of a book in the bibliography of her damn dissertation? That's what we're doing? And you want to say that's what caused it? Let's not be stupid, okay? Let's be real. This is Tim Black you're talking to. Joe Biden plagiarized, and he became a senator, a vice president, and now a president. You mean to tell me a black woman can't become Harvard president? They got a stricter criteria than the U.S. Senate, than the Obama administration, and the Oval Office? Did you know Dr. Gay beat out 599 other job applicants? And even though she did that, people are still saying she was an affirmative action hire. She went to Stanford and Harvard. But she's an affirmative action hire because they don't want to admit the reality of why Dr. Gay resigned. Couldn't have anything to do with race. They don't even want to admit that America's America, you know? It's pathetic how far people will go to deny reality. So, of course, Dr. Gay, the reason why this makes news, because at the end of it all, everybody and their mama knows this is over Israel. That's what the real reason was. That's really what caused it. That's why it grew legs and ran like a marathon. and people want to deny it. Her quitting a job is not a big deal. Hell, her getting fired from a job is not a big deal. I mean, it's big for Harvard, but it's not big in the grand scope of things. Do you know there were 15.4 million layoffs in 2022? 15.4 million. 40% of Americans have been terminated in their lifetimes. If you see 10 people, 5 of them, almost 5, at least 4 of them, have been fired before. And Dr. Gay wasn't even fired, she quit. Now, how many of the 15.4 million people that were fired in 2022, how many of them do you think made the front page of the New York Times? Maybe 100? 101. Dr. Gay's 101. Boss up, America. Harvard will keep on Harvarding, and Dr. Gay will keep on Dr. Gaying. Just not at Harvard. So it's not Harvard I'm worried about. It's not Dr. Gay I'm worried about. It's our broke asses that I'm concerned about. See, we ain't going to make the paper, but we will lose our jobs. It'll be like that tree that falls in the forest that no one hears. You can watch 10 mainstream media broadcasts about this story, and 10 of them will lie to you about what caused this. That's how dangerous the climate is to call out the Gaza conflict, or to call the Gaza conflict the Gaza genocide. At the end of the day, Dr. Gay was railroaded out of her job. But she'll rise again. You and I should be so lucky. If you don't want to miss the next episode of me calling out politicians, culture, and breaking news and calling it straight, subscribe to this channel. Until then, don't let nobody take your cornbread. Yes, Lord.
Most news shows are suspect. They don't focus on Black issues, and when they do, it's all fluff. How does that help your life? How does that help your family? How does that help the culture? They don't. The Tim Black Show is different. Tim Black gives you news for people who can't stand the news. Real, authentic, researched, entertaining, on point. Don't let nobody take your cornbread. Visit www.timblacktv.com today. Get Black breaking news, politics, culture from someone you can trust. TimBlackTV.com. Join us today.
Calling it out with Tim Black. The whole world's so sad. We live us so bad because we don't get who we stab. Trying to get that bag.